He said the baby wasn't his before he ever said congratulations. That sentence still lives in my body, not my memory. It sits somewhere behind my ribs, heavy and unmoving, like a stone I swallowed and never passed. I remember standing in our bathroom, the light above the mirror buzzing faintly, the floor cold under my bare feet, my hand resting on my stomach the way women do when they're trying to believe something beautiful is real. I hadn't even finished the sentence. I'm pregnant. He didn't look at my face, he looked at my hand. Then he laughed, not loud, not cruel, just a short breath through his nose like I'd told a joke that didn't land. "That's not mine," he said. The world didn't shatter. That's the lie people tell. It didn't shatter. It went quiet. Too quiet. Like when the power goes out in the middle of the night and the refrigerator hum disappears, and suddenly you realize how loud silence can be. I remember thinking there must be some mistake, some misunderstanding of words, because this was my husband, the man who kissed my forehead every morning, the man who once drove 40 minutes at midnight just to bring me soup when I had the flu, the man who used to say, "If we ever have kids, I hope they have your stubborn streak." I watched his face for a crack, a smile, anything that said this was fear talking, not truth. But his eyes were already hard, already decided. And in that moment, before the questions, before the crying, before the long years that followed, something inside me folded inward, quietly, permanently. Before that day, my life was simple in the way most lives are simple before they aren't. I met Daniel when I was 26, working the front desk at a dental office that smelled like mint and disinfectant. He came in for a root canal, nervous and talkative, making bad jokes to hide it. He wore a navy jacket with a missing button and kept apologizing for sweating. "I'm not normally like this," he said, wiping his forehead with a paper towel. "I'm very brave in other situations." I laughed because it felt kind, because he felt kind. We married 3 years later in a small church with peeling white paint and wooden pews that creaked when people stood. I wore my mother's veil. Daniel cried when I walked down the aisle, the quiet kind of crying where your shoulders shake but you don't want anyone to see. For a long time it was good, not perfect, just good in the real way. Sunday mornings with burnt toast and coffee that was always a little too weak, folding laundry together while watching old reruns, arguments about money that ended with apologies, not slammed doors. We tried for a baby after 5 years. That's when time started to stretch in strange ways. Month after month, hope arrived and left without warning. Pregnancy tests lined the bathroom trash can like small white ghosts. Daniel grew quieter. I grew careful with my expectations. We stopped talking about it out loud, as if naming the desire might scare it away. The doctor said everything looked fine. That word, fine, became our enemy. Fine didn't explain the empty space. Fine didn't tuck me in at night when my body felt like it was betraying me. I was 34 when I finally saw the second line. It was faint, so faint I thought my eyes were lying. I sat on the edge of the tub, holding my breath, waiting for it to disappear. It didn't. I waited until evening to tell him. I wanted the moment to be right. I cooked his favorite meal, lemon chicken, roasted potatoes. The smell filled the house, warm and hopeful. That's when I said it, and that's when he said it wasn't his. He told me he needed time. He slept on the couch. He avoided my eyes. When I cried, he stared at the television like I was background noise. I tried logic first. "We've been trying for years," I said one night, my voice shaking. "I haven't been with anyone else. You know that." He shrugged. "Then explain it." As if I could explain a miracle well enough to convince him it belonged to us. By the end of that week, he told his sister. By the end of the month, my mother wouldn't return my calls. The story had moved ahead of me, growing legs, growing teeth. "She trapped him," I heard once at a family gathering I wasn't supposed to attend but did anyway, standing in the hallway with my coat still on. Probably cheated. I became a woman people felt comfortable judging. Daniel moved out before my second trimester. He said he couldn't raise another man's child. He said it calmly, like he was discussing a lease agreement. I asked for a paternity test. I begged, actually. My dignity thinned with every conversation. After the baby's born, he said, if you're so sure. Pregnancy is already lonely. Pregnancy under suspicion is something else entirely. Every appointment, every kick, every ultrasound picture felt like evidence I was collecting for a trial I never asked to be part of. Our daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday morning. The nurse placed her on my chest, warm and crying, her tiny fingers curling instinctively into my skin. She had Daniel's eyes. I saw it immediately, that familiar deep brown, steady and observant. The nurse smiled and said, "She looks just like her daddy." I laughed and cried at the same time. Daniel didn't come to the hospital. He sent a text 3 days later asking when we could do the test. I agreed. Of course I did, because when you know the truth, you think it will protect you. I didn't know how long truth can be buried or how carefully someone can hide it. I didn't read the DNA report until years later, not because it didn't exist, but because someone didn't want me to see it. And when I finally did, sitting alone at my kitchen table with my daughter asleep down the hall, the house quiet except for the ticking clock, I realized the worst betrayal wasn't that he doubted me, it was that he never did. Life doesn't pause just because your heart is bruised. It keeps moving, almost rudely, dragging you with it whether you're ready or not. After Daniel left, the house felt unfamiliar, like a place I was borrowing instead of living in. His shoes were gone from the entryway, the bathroom drawer suddenly too empty. I packed away his mug, the one with the chipped handle, because seeing it each morning felt like reopening a wound that refused to close. I worked until I couldn't anymore. My ankles swelled by noon. My back ached constantly. At the dental office, patients asked polite questions about my husband, about whether I was excited. I learned to smile with only my mouth. Yes, I'd say, very excited. At night, I lay awake with one hand on my stomach, feeling my daughter shift and roll, her movements gentle but insistent. Those moments were the only ones that felt honest. She didn't doubt me. She didn't ask for proof. Money became tight fast. Daniel stopped contributing after he moved out. His lawyer sent a letter stating he would reconsider financial responsibility pending confirmation of paternity. The words were cold, precise, and cruel in their neutrality. My mother helped when she could, slipping grocery money into my purse like I was still a teenager. She never said "I told you so." She just cooked and cleaned and sat beside me in silence when the nights got too long. "She knows who you are," my mother said once, pressing her hand to my belly. "That's enough." But it didn't feel like enough when the world kept asking me to explain myself. After the birth, the days blurred together in soft exhaustion. My daughter, Lily, was a quiet baby. She slept in long stretches, her breathing a small, steady rhythm beside my bed. I memorized her face the way people memorize prayers. Daniel came by once, 2 weeks after she was born. He stood awkwardly in the living room, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the walls like he was in a stranger's home. "She's small," he said. "All babies are," I replied. He didn't ask to hold her. We scheduled the paternity test the following week. I dressed Lily carefully that morning, smoothing the fabric of her tiny onesie, whispering reassurances she couldn't understand. At the clinic, Daniel sat across from me, arms crossed, jaw tight. The nurse swabbed Lily's cheek, then mine, then his. It took less than 5 minutes. "It'll take a couple of weeks," she said gently. Daniel nodded. He didn't look at me. Those weeks were a special kind of torture. I checked the mail obsessively. Every envelope made my heart race. I imagined the relief I'd feel when the results came back, the apology that would surely follow. I told myself that once the truth was official, everything would change. The results arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I wasn't home when they came. Daniel was. He called me that evening. "It's mine," he said, his voice flat. I waited. "Is that it?" I asked. "What do you want me to say?" An apology, I thought, a recognition of what you put me through. But I said nothing. "I'll set up child support," he added, "through my lawyer." And just like that, the moment passed. No tears, no remorse, just logistics. I asked him if I could see the report. He said there's no need. You know the answer now. I didn't push. I should have, but I was tired, and part of me wanted to believe that knowing was enough. Daniel never moved back in. He told people we were better apart. He visited Lily occasionally, stiff and formal, as if afraid of getting attached to something he once tried to deny. Over time, the anger dulled into something heavier, resignation maybe. I built a routine around it. Lily grew. She laughed easily. She loved the color yellow and the sound of rain against the windows. When she learned to walk, she reached for my hands, trusting, steady. Daniel remained a presence at the edges of our lives. Birthdays, holidays. He paid what he was required to pay, and no more. He never asked about my life beyond Lily. I stopped asking questions, too. Years passed that way. I learned how to be strong in small, quiet ways. I learned how to show up even when it hurt. I learned how to let go of the version of my life I thought I'd have. Or at least, I thought I had. It wasn't until Lily was 6 that something shifted. Daniel missed her school recital. He'd promised to come. Lily stood on stage scanning the audience, her face falling when she didn't see him. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the place where his chair used to be. For the first time in years, I felt the old anger rise, not sharp, but clear. I realized then that I'd been living around a lie, not the lie he told others, but the one he told himself. And that lie had shaped all of our lives. I didn't know how deep it went. I didn't know there was proof, real proof, hidden away, waiting for me to find it. And I didn't know that when I finally did, it would explain everything I'd spent years trying to understand. There are moments in life that feel ordinary while they're happening, and only later do you recognize them as the beginning of something else. A door quietly opening, a thread pulled just enough to notice it might unravel. For me, it started with a folder. I was cleaning out the hallway closet on a Saturday afternoon, the kind of chore you put off until the dust becomes undeniable. Lily was at a birthday party, the house unusually quiet. I had music playing softly, the windows open, sunlight spilling across the floor in pale rectangles. At the back of the closet, behind winter coats and an old vacuum, I found a cardboard box I didn't recognize. Inside were papers, old ones, legal-looking. At first, I assumed they were leftovers from the divorce, documents I'd avoided, memories I hadn't wanted to revisit. But as I sifted through them, my chest tightened. Medical forms, correspondence from a lab, an envelope stamped confidential. My name wasn't on it. Daniel's was. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being nosy, that whatever it was, it belonged to a past I'd already survived. Still, my hands shook as I set the papers back in the box. I closed the closet door and tried to forget about it. But forgetting is hard once something has lodged itself in your mind. That night, I lay awake listening to Lily breathe in the next room, the sound steady and reassuring. The image of that envelope floated in my thoughts, insistent and unresolved. Why would Daniel's documents still be in my house? He'd been gone for years. The next time he came to pick Lily up, I watched him more closely, the way he avoided looking at the hallway, the way his eyes flicked toward the closet door when he thought I wasn't paying attention. "You've still got some of your things here," I said casually, leaning against the counter. He stiffened. "Do I?" "Yeah, old stuff." "I'll get it eventually." Eventually. The word hung between us. That night, after Lily went to bed, I took the box back out. This time, I opened the envelope. Inside was a DNA report. My heart began to race as I scanned the page, the clinical language blurring together. My eyes landed on the bolded line. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The date was from years ago, from right after Lily was born. I sat down hard on the floor, my back against the wall, the paper trembling in my hands. He had known. Not suspected, not wondered. Known. I felt something cold spread through me, a realization settling in layers. All those years, all that distance, the way he'd held himself apart like a man protecting a wound. It hadn't been doubt. It had been a choice. I read the report again, slower this time. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. And then I saw it all. Another page attached. A second test. Different lab. Same result. I pressed my palm to my mouth to keep from making a sound. 2 tests. 2 confirmations. He hadn't just learned the truth. He had made sure of it. I thought of every moment he treated Lily like an obligation instead of a miracle. Every time he spoken to me with cool distance, as if I were the one who'd wronged him. The anger came, hot and sudden, but beneath it was something else. Grief, maybe. Grief for the years lost to a lie that didn't have to exist. I stayed there on the floor until the house grew dark, the music long forgotten. I didn't cry. My body felt too numb for that. Instead, I thought about why. Why would a man who knew the truth still walk away? Why would he let everyone believe the worst of me? The answer came slowly, like a bruise surfacing days after the injury. Because believing Lily wasn't his made leaving easier. Because doubt gave him permission. I folded the papers carefully and put them back in the envelope. Then I put everything back in the box and slid it under my bed, where Lily couldn't find it. Sleep didn't come easily that night. In the morning, Daniel texted asking to switch weekends. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Sure, come by later. We should talk. My hands were steady when I set the phone down. Whatever conversation we were about to have, it was one he'd avoided for years, and I wasn't going to let him hide behind silence anymore. Daniel arrived just after 6, the sky already dimming into that soft gray that makes everything feel unfinished. I watched him pull into the driveway from the kitchen window, his car idling longer than necessary before he stepped out. He looked older than I remembered. Lines around his eyes, shoulders slightly hunched, like the weight of years had finally decided to settle. When he came inside, Lily ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his legs. "Daddy," she said, bright and sure. He smiled, awkward but genuine, patting her head. "Hey, kiddo." I watched the exchange carefully. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, the way he kept his body angled away from mine. "Can you go wash your hands?" I asked Lily. "Dinner's almost ready." She nodded and skipped down the hallway. The house felt suddenly smaller when we were alone. Daniel cleared his throat. "You said you wanted to talk?" "I did," I replied. My voice surprised me. It was calm, almost gentle. I gestured toward the table. "Sit." He hesitated, then sat, folding his hands in front of him like a man preparing for bad news. I didn't ease into it. I'd spent too many years circling the truth. "I found the DNA report," I said. The color drained from his face so quickly it startled me. His eyes flicked toward the hallway, then back to me. "What report?" he asked too fast. "The one you got when Lily was born. Actually, both of them." Silence. It stretched and stretched, thick and heavy, until it felt like something physical pressing against my chest. "You knew," I said quietly. "You always knew." Daniel swallowed. His jaw tightened, the muscle pulsing just beneath the skin. "I didn't want things to turn out the way they did," he said finally. That was his defense. Not denial, not apology, just inevitability shaped like regret. "I asked you," I said. "I begged you. I asked to see the report, Daniel. You told me there was no need." "I was confused," he said. "I needed time." "Years?" My voice cracked then, just a little. "You needed years?" He looked down at his hands. "I thought if I let myself believe it wasn't mine, it would be easier to walk away." The words landed like a slap. "So you chose to believe a lie and let everyone else believe it too?" He nodded once, a small, defeated movement. "I couldn't be what you wanted, a husband, a father. I was already halfway out." I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because something inside me broke clean in two. "So instead of leaving honestly, you made me the villain." "I never said you cheated," he protested weakly. "You didn't have to. You let the silence do it for you." We sat there, the years between us filling the room. I thought of the looks I'd endured, the whispers, the way I'd learned to carry myself smaller, quieter, just to survive the judgment. "And Lily?" I asked. "What about her?" He hesitated. "I didn't want to get attached in case—" "In case what?" I snapped. "In case the truth made you feel something you didn't want to feel?" His eyes filled then, real tears this time. He scrubbed at them with the heel of his hand. "I was afraid," he whispered. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the papers in his face and demand those years back. Instead, I took a slow breath and stood. Fear doesn't excuse cruelty, and it doesn't erase responsibility. Lily's footsteps sounded in the hallway. Daniel straightened, wiping his face quickly. "Is Daddy staying for dinner?" she asked, peeking around the corner. "For a little while," I said, forcing a smile. "Go sit." She nodded and climbed into her chair. We ate quietly. Lily talked about her day, about a picture she drew in school. Daniel listened, nodding, smiling in all the right places. I watched him watch her, and I saw it then, the love he'd kept at arm's length, the regret he'd carefully buried under excuses. After dinner, he left sooner than usual. At the door, he turned to me, his hand on the knob. "I'm sorry for all of it." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't hear him, but because some apologies come too late to matter. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I took the DNA reports out again and spread them across the table. I read every line, every date, every signature. Proof. Not just of paternity, but of a betrayal so deliberate, so calculated, it changed the way I understood my own life. I realized then that knowing the truth wasn't enough. Not this time. Something had to be done. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because my mind wouldn't stop rearranging the past, slotting the truth into moments that had never made sense before. Daniel's distance, his reluctance, the way his family had closed ranks without ever asking for my side of the story. It hadn't been confusion, it had been coordination. By morning, my sadness had sharpened into something clearer. Not revenge, not rage, resolve. Lily ate her cereal at the kitchen table, humming softly to herself, milk dribbling down her chin. I watched her, the familiar ache in my chest settling into something steadier. Whatever I did next had to protect her. That was the line I wouldn't cross. I started with questions. I called Daniel's sister, Karen, the one who'd stopped answering my messages years ago. I kept my voice light, almost casual. "I found some old paperwork," I said, "from when Lily was born. I was wondering if you remembered when Daniel got the DNA results." There was a pause on the line. Then, "Why would I remember that?" "Because you were there," I said gently. "You went with him." Silence again, longer this time. "He was scared," she said finally. "We all were." "So you knew," I said. She sighed. "He didn't want a child, not then. He felt trapped." "And the lie?" I asked. "The one about me?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Next, I called his mother. She answered on the third ring. "I have the DNA reports," I said, skipping pleasantries, "from the beginning." Another pause. I imagined her sitting in her tidy living room, hands folded neatly in her lap. "He told us," she said slowly, "but we thought it would work itself out." "By letting me be blamed?" I asked. "I'm sorry," she said. "I truly am." The words felt rehearsed. I thanked her and hung up. With each conversation, the shape of the truth became clearer. This hadn't been one man's cowardice alone. It had been a shared decision, a quiet agreement that my reputation was an acceptable casualty. I contacted a lawyer next, not to punish, but to understand. She was kind, efficient, and careful with her language. "You have grounds," she said, "for emotional damages, possibly defamation." I thought of Lily, of courtrooms and whispered conversations, and the way children absorb tension like air. "No," I said, "that's not what I want." "What do you want?" she asked. I looked at the reports on the table, the evidence of years of silence. "I want the truth known, but I want to keep my dignity." We talked options: letters, mediation, boundaries. I chose the slowest, quietest path. I wrote a letter, not an angry one, not a pleading one, just the truth. I wrote about the pregnancy, the accusation, the years of carrying shame that wasn't mine. I attached copies of the DNA reports. I addressed it to Daniel's family and a few mutual friends who had quietly faded from my life. I didn't accuse, I stated. Facts have a way of standing on their own. Before sending it, I reread it twice, checking for bitterness. There was none, just clarity. When I dropped the envelopes into the mailbox, my hands didn't shake. Daniel called the next day. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight. "I'm correcting the record," I replied. "You don't have to do this." "I already did," I replied. He was quiet for a moment. "I'll tell them myself," he said. "Please." "You had years," I said softly. "This isn't about punishment. It's about truth." The fallout was slow but steady. Messages came in, some apologetic, some defensive, a few silent, unread. Daniel's visits changed. He stayed longer, asked more questions, tried, awkwardly, to bridge the gap he'd built himself. I didn't stop him, but I didn't make it easy either. Trust, I'd learned, doesn't grow in rushed soil. One evening, as Lily colored at the table, she looked up at me. "Daddy was sad today," she said. "I know," I replied, brushing her hair back. "Sometimes grown-ups carry heavy feelings." "Is it my fault?" she asked. My heart clenched. "No," I said firmly, "never." That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I wasn't done yet. The truth had been uncovered. Now it had to be faced. Truth doesn't explode the way people expect it to. It doesn't always arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it moves quietly, room to room, person to person, changing the temperature of everything it touches. The first real shift happened at Lily's school. It was parent-teacher night, the kind with folding chairs and paper name tags. The classroom smelled faintly of crayons and hand sanitizer. I stood near Lily's desk reading her spelling test when I felt someone behind me. "I owe you an apology." I turned to see Daniel's sister, Karen. She looked uncomfortable, like a woman wearing shoes half a size too small. "I believed what I wanted to believe," she said, "and I let others do the same." I nodded, not forgiving, not rejecting, just acknowledging. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. Across the room, Daniel stood with Lily's teacher, listening attentively, his hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. He looked different, less guarded, more present. The truth had changed him, too. Word traveled slowly but steadily through the circles we shared. Old friends reached out, some clumsily, some sincerely. "I didn't know," they said. "I should have asked," others admitted. I accepted the apologies I could, let the rest pass without response. One afternoon, Daniel's mother asked to meet. We sat at a cafe halfway between our homes, neutral ground. She folded her napkin carefully before speaking. "I failed you," she said, "and my granddaughter." I believed her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued, "but I want to do better now. Then start with honesty, with Lily." She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. Daniel's reckoning came in quieter ways. People looked at him differently, not with anger, but with disappointment. That stung more, I think. He'd lost the comfort of his narrative, the one where he was the confused man caught in an unfortunate situation. Now he was just a man who'd chosen the easier lie. He didn't fight it. He showed up. School events, doctor appointments, small moments that add up. One evening, after Lily went to bed, he stayed behind. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, "but I want to be better." I studied his face, searching for urgency, for self-pity. There was none. Being better isn't a feeling, it's consistency. He nodded. "I know." For the first time, I believed him. The real consequence, though, wasn't social or emotional. It was internal. I stopped carrying a burden I didn't realize I'd been holding. The shame I'd absorbed, quietly, patiently, began to loosen its grip. I stood taller, spoke more freely, took up space again. Lily noticed. "You smile more," she said one morning, swinging her backpack over her shoulder. "So do you," I replied. She grinned. The story people told about me had changed, but more importantly, the story I told myself had too. I wasn't the woman who'd been doubted. I was the woman who'd endured. And finally, the woman who'd been believed. The days after the letters and conversations were quieter, not empty, but full in a different way, the kind of fullness that comes from finally putting the weight you've carried into its proper place. I spent more mornings with Lily now, lingering over breakfast, listening to her chatter about school projects or the new book she was reading. The sound of her laughter had a way of reminding me that life hadn't stopped. It had only been waiting for me to catch up. Daniel's visits became predictable, not because I controlled them, but because the honesty between us made it easier to plan. He showed up when he said he would, stayed involved in the small ways he could, and never overstepped. For Lily, it was normal. For me, it was cautious trust being rebuilt, brick by brick. I started taking evening walks again, something I'd stopped doing when my days were consumed by worry and doubt. The crisp air in the fall, the smell of wet leaves on the sidewalks, the quiet hum of streetlights, everything reminded me that the world still existed beyond betrayal, beyond accusation, beyond fear. I met my friends for coffee, the same ones who had stayed in the wings during the worst years, quietly offering encouragement without judgment. Sitting with them, talking about books or small victories, I realized I had almost forgotten how good ordinary life could feel. One day, while Lily was at a friend's birthday party, I went through my closet. The box with the DNA report sat there, untouched for months. I took it out, flipped through the pages, and then carefully tucked it into the back of a drawer. Not gone, not destroyed, just quiet, like a wound that had scabbed over. I thought about Daniel, about what he had done, about how he'd tried to shape reality around his fear. and I forgave him, not because what he did was acceptable, but because I didn't want to let anger define the rest of my life. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, it meant reclaiming peace. I also forgave myself for doubting myself, for allowing his absence to fill my life with shame, for the years spent tiptoeing through other people's assumptions. That forgiveness was perhaps the hardest part of all. Months passed, winter came and went. Lily's 6th birthday rolled around. We had a small party in the backyard, balloons tied to chairs, homemade cake, laughter bouncing between the walls of the house. Daniel came, yes, but he wasn't the center. Lily was, and I realized in that moment that we had created something unbreakable, a little world where love, truth, and care mattered more than mistakes. I started volunteering at the local library, helping children with reading. It was slow work, but rewarding. I found joy in seeing small eyes light up when a story made sense or a word clicked. Helping others reminded me that life had layers beyond my own struggles. One afternoon, Daniel and I had a long talk while Lily napped. We didn't discuss blame, we didn't rehash the past. Instead, we spoke about the present, about co-parenting, about the kind of family we wanted Lily to grow up in. "I want her to feel safe," I said, "even if we don't see eye to eye." "I do too," he said. "I'll do better." "I believe you," I said, "but I'll be watching." We laughed, not a bitter laugh, not a forced laugh, a laugh that felt like a bridge finally built, step by careful step. That night, after Lily went to bed, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote about betrayal, about fear, about resilience. I wrote about what it meant to reclaim your life piece by piece when someone you loved chose to betray your trust. And I wrote about hope, the strange, stubborn thing that refuses to leave even when the world has told you it isn't yours. I realized then that life was not about the lies we endured, but about the truth we hold on to. And that truth had given me something no one could ever take away: dignity, clarity, and a future I could choose for myself. Even now, years later, I think about that moment in the bathroom when he first said the words I'd never forget: "That's not mine." At the time, it felt like the world had stopped, like every future I'd imagined for myself had been pulled from my hands and shredded quietly, carefully, by someone I trusted more than anyone. But life has a way of teaching us lessons we don't always recognize in the moment. Lessons that only become clear after the pain softens and the dust settles. I learned that day and in the years that followed that betrayal doesn't define you, only your response does. That truth, even when delayed or hidden, has a weight that cannot be denied. And that love, real love, isn't always easy. Sometimes it requires courage, patience, and a refusal to let anger fester. I watch Lily now, 7 years old, curious and bold, the kind of child who asks questions you aren't always ready to answer. She knows her father loves her, and she knows I've fought for her truth, for her life, free from the shadow of someone else's fear. She also knows that families are messy, but love can grow in unexpected ways. Daniel and I have settled into a rhythm that works. It isn't perfect, we don't always agree. Sometimes his guilt seeps into our conversations, and sometimes my resentment tries to creep back. But it doesn't control us, and most importantly, Lily thrives. I've rebuilt my life piece by piece. I've learned to trust my instincts, to speak my truth even when it's hard, and to protect the people I love without sacrificing myself. The DNA reports that once held so much weight now rest in a drawer, a reminder of the power of truth, but no longer a source of pain. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't found the reports, if I had lived my life believing Daniel's lie. The thought sends a chill down my spine.
I might have accepted a life of quiet humiliation, carrying shame that wasn't mine to bear. But I didn't. I chose to see, to act, and to reclaim my story. For anyone listening to this story, I want you to remember this. Betrayal may feel permanent, lies may seem unshakable, but clarity, action, and courage can restore what was lost, your dignity, your peace, and your future. I tell you this not to make you feel better about me, but to remind you that even in the darkest chapters, you have the power to turn the page. Would you have done what I did? Would you have demanded the truth even when it meant facing years of disappointment and fear? Or would you have remained silent, letting doubt and lies shape your child's life and your own? I hope you find the courage to choose truth, to protect those you love, and to never let someone else's fear define your worth. If my story touched you, or if you faced a betrayal of your own, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your story, your lessons, and your triumphs. We can learn from each other, and together we can remember that even when life breaks us, it also teaches us how to rebuild. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that stories like these matter. And thank you for letting me share my truth with you. The years have passed since that stormy chapter in my life. Lily is now in second grade, and every morning she wakes up with a laugh that fills the house like sunlight spilling through the blinds. She has Daniel's eyes, deep brown, steady, and observant, and my stubbornness, which I secretly celebrate when it comes in handy. Watching her grow reminds me that even when the people we trust fail us, life finds a way to nurture beauty, resilience, and hope. I've learned to treasure the ordinary moments, cooking dinner with Lily on a Saturday afternoon, watching her carefully pour milk into her cereal, or seeing her run barefoot through the backyard chasing butterflies. These are the moments that anchor me. They remind me that life isn't just the betrayal or the lies. Life is also the soft warmth, the quiet laughter, the small victories we collect like treasures. Daniel and I have rebuilt a fragile, honest relationship. It's not perfect, and it never will be, but it has honesty, and that matters more than any amount of comfort built on fear. He attends school recitals, helps with homework, and sits in the kitchen with me discussing the mundane details of life, things I once took for granted before the lie reshaped our entire world. I reflect often on the choices I made, the decision to find the DNA reports, the letters I sent, the conversations I demanded. Those choices were difficult. They required confronting fear, facing anger, and holding fast to my dignity. But every choice was rooted in one unwavering principle: protecting the truth and protecting Lily. And that principle guided me through the years when it felt like everyone else had abandoned it. I've also learned to forgive in a way that doesn't erase the past. Forgiving Daniel doesn't mean forgetting what he did. It doesn't mean pretending the years of doubt and distance didn't happen. Forgiveness, I've realized, is not about them. It's about reclaiming my life, finding peace, and refusing to let anger consume me. It's about choosing my emotional freedom over bitterness, and slowly, over time, I've embraced it. I've even forgiven myself for doubting myself, for letting his lies hurt me, and for the quiet years of shame I carried. I've learned that self-forgiveness is often the hardest form of forgiveness, but it's also the most liberating. Without it, there's no way to move forward. With it, there's a world full of possibility. Life, I now understand, is both fragile and resilient. Betrayal can break us, but the human spirit is capable of incredible repair. Love can grow in unexpected ways. Children teach us courage. Truth, even when delayed, is never meaningless. And in the aftermath of pain, we discover strength we never knew existed. I sometimes think about other women who may be living under the shadow of doubt, who are quietly carrying the weight of someone else's fear, lies, or betrayal. If my story can reach just one person, it's this. You have the power to reclaim your life, to seek the truth, to protect those you love, and to find your peace, even when the road is long and uncertain. Lily will grow up knowing her story, the truth of her life, and the love of a mother who refused to let lies define her. And that, I think, is the greatest victory of all. Not revenge, not punishment, but the quiet triumph of honesty, courage, and dignity. Every day I wake with gratitude for my daughter, for my family, for the lessons life forced me to learn. And I carry hope for the future, the kind of hope that is steady, patient, and enduring. I am no longer a woman defined by betrayal. I am a woman defined by her choices, her resilience, and her ability to love fiercely, honestly, and unconditionally.
There's a strange kind of peace that comes after stormy years, a quiet that doesn't hum with fear or doubt, but pulses softly with certainty. It's in the way Lily talks about her day at school, the way she paints pictures of sun and sky, the way she insists on wearing mismatched socks because they make me happy. It's in the way the house smells like warm cookies on a Tuesday evening, and how Daniel, finally present, finally accountable, helps with the small routines without fanfare. I've learned that healing doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. It's patient. It's in the small, deliberate acts we take to reclaim our lives. The letters I wrote, the conversations I demanded, the boundaries I enforced, all of it led to this: a life where truth matters and where love doesn't come with fear or doubt as a condition. Sometimes I replay the moments when Daniel first denied Lily, the way his eyes avoided mine, the coldness in his voice. It still stings, but it no longer defines me. It no longer defines her. What defines us now is the courage to confront the truth, the patience to rebuild relationships honestly, and the willingness to forgive without erasing history. I've also learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing what someone has done. It's about freeing yourself. Every letter sent, every conversation had, every choice I made to stand firm was not just for Lily. It was for me, for my own dignity, for the right to live without carrying a lie like a stone in my chest. And it worked. I look at Daniel now and I see a man trying, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but genuinely to do better. He participates in Lily's life. He supports her. He apologizes in moments that matter. And while trust is something that must be earned slowly, I've learned that accountability can be the first step towards rebuilding it. Lily, in her innocence, reminds me every day why the fight was worth it. She knows she is loved, she knows she is safe, and she knows the truth, that the mother she looks up to is a woman who faced betrayal, stood up to it, and chose honesty and strength over bitterness and fear. To anyone watching or listening to this story, here is what I want you to carry with you. Life may hand you betrayal, lies, or doubt. People you love may fail you, sometimes in ways you cannot imagine. But within you lies the power to reclaim your story, to stand up for truth, to protect those who depend on you, to forgive when it is hard, and to rebuild life, piece by piece, with dignity intact. Ask yourself, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you accept a life of quiet humiliation, or would you fight for the truth? Would you allow doubt to shape your child's world, or would you ensure that honesty, love, and accountability guide every step? Your choice doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be explosive. It can be as simple as asking for clarity, setting boundaries, or refusing to accept lies as reality. Small, deliberate choices accumulate into freedom, peace, and eventually joy. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever faced betrayal and learned to reclaim your life, I invite you to share your experiences in the comments. Let's create a space where honesty, courage, and empowerment can be celebrated. Let's remind one another that even in the darkest chapters, there is always the possibility of light. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that real stories, stories of betrayal, of resilience, of love, deserve to be told. And thank you for allowing me to share my journey, my daughter's story, and our truth with you. Remember, life doesn't have to define you by the betrayal you endure. It can define you by the strength you cultivate, the choices you make, and the love you protect.